Hello again everybody. So I've pretty much got to a stage now with this bike where I've made all the changes and done all the modifications that I want to get it just where I want it to be as far as a bike that looks the way I want it to look and is practical enough for me to use every day. So I thought now would be a fantastic time to do a little kind of review of the bike in its modified form. Now I'm going to do two videos. The first, this one, will be a overview and walk around of the bike and the modifications I've done, tiny bit about why I did them and how, and just a general look around. And then the next video will be a onboard, we'll go for a ride and I will talk about how the modifications have affected the way the bike handles, the power delivery and all that kind of thing. So yeah, just for anyone who's unfamiliar with this bike, this is Ruby. She is a 2016 Suzuki VanVan at 125cc, and I've pretty much over the last year and a half, 2 years, been modifying her, as I say, just to suit my needs and wants. So yeah, let's start going around and looking at what I've done. I think we'll start at the front and work our way back. That's probably the easiest way to do it. So straight away from the front, anyone who's familiar with this model will notice that the big round instrument cluster has gone in favour of a small digital Cosso gauge. Now, some people might not like that. It's kind of one of those either love it or hate it type things. I personally love the digital speedo opposed to the round one. Just adds more functionality as well. I mean, it's actually got a rev counter as well, which the bike didn't originally have. So that's that. Another key feature you'll notice if you're familiar with the 125cc variant of this is the mirrors. I've changed those over to round ones. Doesn't really do anything apart from it's just the looks. I prefer round mirrors to the little square ones. That's just my, personal thing. I've got my little sat-nav mount there as well. Yep, so that's that. What else we got at the front here? Yes, another thing you'll notice is the 125 normally has a bare metal suspension yoke. I have painted that black. The 200cc version did already have that painted black, but unfortunately they only sold it over here for a couple of months and then pretty much discontinued it, so that was disappointing. But yeah, I do need to repaint some of this because the where I've had like stone chips and keys flying around and stuff, it's kind of scratched some bits, but I did have quite a bit of problem with surface rust on these bits, especially underneath. Obviously since I painted them I've not had any problem at all, so that's pretty fantastic. I do kind of prefer the look of it as well to the bare metal. It just looks a little bit nicer. Kind of continuing on that theme of wanting to avoid rust, the standard handlebars on this bike are chrome and they look nice enough, but if you don't keep on top of keeping them polished, they do have a tendency of again getting surface rust. So I've replaced those with a set of rental bars. The actual width and height and everything else of the bars is identical to the standard. It's just literally I wanted it black and to not rust, which again has been yeah, absolutely fine, which is good. Is there anything else at the very front that I can think of? No, that's it for that. So the next modification around here is the heated handlebars. Now they are wired in via their own relay and fuse, so they're completely separate to the other electronics. They don't draw any power from any of the other circuits. They've got their own complete circuit, and obviously because they're on a relay they come on and off, or rather you can't turn them on unless the ignition's on. So just means that if I accidentally leave them on, it's not going to drain the battery when the bike's off, because I did that before with a much larger bike and it was an absolute pain in the arse. Again, on similar sort of themes, the electronics, I've got a USB at the front here. That again is on its own separate system, so its own relay, its own fuse, everything else. I don't really use this front one, to be fair. It's only really if the sat-nav runs out of battery, it just allows me to charge that, so I always know where I'm going, but I've not really had to use it that much. The battery on the TomTom's actually really good. Is there anything else around the front here? Nope. I think that's pretty much it for the front. So let's go down to the middle. Right, so this is probably one of my favourite upgrades for the whole bike is, well, this and the pannier rack, which we'll get onto later, but this is a Bosch Plate, originally from a Sinus Apache, because they use the same engine. Now, I really wanted to put one of these on here because, to me, it kind of makes the bike a bit more complete. The standard VanVan doesn't have anything between the front frame and the back. The engine forms part of the frame. I didn't like that so much. I wanted something there, so I got the Bosch Plate, and the this bar underneath is all from the Sinus Apache, and I fitted that. Everything was pretty much just a straight bolt on. The only thing I did have to do is just make this little bit of metal around the front here, because this part of the frame is just ever so slightly different on the VanVan compared to the Sinus. But apart from that, it was just straight bolt on, and yeah, I love it. I mean, I do go green laning and off-roading a little bit, so it does also just protect the bike from anything that flies up, but yeah, for the most part it was just for the looks. I just thought it looked cool, and it was something I always wanted to do. So yeah, that's that. The exhaust, as you can see, is a full stainless system, which, as you can also see, is starting to rust a little bit up there, so I need to actually clean that up. But that's actually a GPR exhaust system. Now, the front pipe here was actually quite difficult to find. I didn't find it on the GPR website or anything. I actually found it on eBay in the end, and it's not something that's particularly easy to find. Yeah, it was really weird, but I did find it, and I do love it. So that's that. The actual exhaust at the back, I'll just come around here and show you. It's just stainless the whole way, and then it's a GPR Geisha end pipe that I've put on there. I do like that one because it's still fairly throaty, but it's just slightly quieter than the Ferrora or any of the other models, because I didn't want to get too much of a headache, but at the same time I wanted the bike to sound nice. So that's the exhaust system. What else we got at the middle? Let's come around the other side. So the chain sprockets, that'll be the next sort of big thing. The standard chain sprockets on these bikes is your kind of standard 125cc specification, and it's just, I mean, plenty of people who have VanVans will know this. The standard chain is like cheese string. It does wear out really quickly. I don't know whether that's because of the size of the rear tyre, because the rear tyres on these are basically, you know, it's almost like the tyre from a 600cc or something. It's huge. And I think that it's just a bit too much for the chain maybe, but yeah, they do have a tendency of wearing really fast. So I've upgraded the chain and the sprockets. They're all upgraded together to a thicker gauge. I mean, that's a 520 pitch chain, if I remember correctly, which is a lot thicker than the standard one. And I can't remember how long I've had this on here now. It's been about 3 years, I think. I've had this chain and sprocket set on here, and it's starting to wear a little bit now. I will be looking to change it at some point in the next 6 months or so, but it's by no means anywhere as bad as the standard chain was after about 3 or 4 months of riding around, which is pretty funny, to be fair. As well as changing the pitch of the chain, I also upgraded the sprocket ratios. So obviously, I won't go into too much detail, but if you change the number of teeth on the front and rear sprocket, you can change the final drive ratio and change the ratio of all the gears. So I can't remember off the top of my head what I've done to the front and back. You'd have to go have a look at the video specifically about that to find out exactly what I did, but I've just changed the overall gear ratios to make the power delivery a bit more useful. I mean, it's not got a massive amount of power anyway. It's only about, as I said before, 11 brake horsepower. So I just changed the ratios to make that a little bit more usable, which seems to have worked absolutely fine. So no complaints there. So where have we got to? We've done everything at the front. We've got to the middle. So yeah, pretty much almost there. So really at the back, aside from the exhaust, which I've already shown you, nothing's really different apart from the obvious, which is this pannier rack, which is the most recent modification video that I did. This is all a proper Givy monologue system, which came off of a Honda CB125F or something like that, and me and my brother have modified it. He welded the bars, and I made a few other little adjustments, but basically, yeah, what we've done, we've taken the rear foot pegs off and bolted the bottom sections here to where the foot pegs would normally go, and then we've got a bar that goes across here and sits on these points here, and then another sort of little bit here which just adds a bit of support. Again, if you want more details on how we did this, obviously go check out the specific video for the pannier rack, but yeah, obviously this gives me a lot more storage. That was a big thing for me. I've always wanted a set of panniers on this bike because I do love to use this as much as I can, and one of the things that was stopping me was, particularly from a work perspective, was just the lack of storage, because I do need to carry a few bits around with me and I just couldn't fit everything in the top box. Yeah, you could put a bigger top box on, but firstly it would just look a bit daft, but also the rear rack, if you have a look at this is the standard rear rack on the 125. It's strong enough, but they're not the thickest bits of metal that are supporting that, so you really don't want to be putting too much weight in just one box. So by adding the panniers, it just gives me a lot more in the way of lockable waterproof storage to carry all my stuff around with. Also, I did want to be able to use this to go travelling a bit further, maybe go camping or something like that. I mean, obviously, again, only a 125, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but in weather like this, who cares? You can just cruise along. She'll do 55, 60, I mean, at a push she'll do 65, but you know, realistically 50, 55 cruising speed is absolutely fine, and I can have all my gear on here, on the back seat here, and just go for a little explore. I do have the option, if I ever want to take someone on the back of this again, I can undo these bits down here, undo these bits here, and then just lift the whole thing off and put the foot pegs back on. But to be honest, mostly it's just me anyway. So yeah, there's not really much point in having the foot pegs on as well anyway, because you know, it adds a little bit of extra weight, that rack anyway, so you're not really going to want to take extra luggage and people on the back. It just would be a bit too much for the bike. So yeah, there you go guys, hopefully you enjoyed this little walk around of the bike. As I say, the next video will be an onboard driving around and just telling you guys how everything's changed, or how the different modifications actually affect the bike. But yeah, as always, if you did like the video, please do give it a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. Go check out my other videos. If you haven't, or you want more information on any of the modifications done here, there's a whole playlist, entire videos for each modification, so do go check those out. And yeah, I shall catch you guys again soon.